this Kettle Hills Board of Commissioners meeting to order. If you would please join us and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we move into our moment of silence, two families, if you would keep them in your thoughts and prayers this evening and moving forward. One of our employees, Nora Jacoby's father-in-law, passed away last week. Judge Jacoby, if you'll please keep Nora and her family in your thoughts and prayers. And also Mike and Valerie Loeck. Mike's on our Zoning Board of Adjustment, and they're very engaged citizens. Mike's mother passed away this past weekend. So we'll keep all of them, please, in your thoughts and prayers. And with that, we will move into a moment of silence. Thank you. Next item is the agenda approval.
So moved.
Second. Any comments? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we move on to the first time set aside this evening for public comment. No one signed up, and unless Philip wants to speak, we really don't have any public. So staff are welcome to
I
speak.
think I already did.
He's writing. Okay. Then we will just keep moving right along and head straight to Commissioner's agenda.
Nothing for me.
Well, I got something real quick.
Okay.
I know we have a budget to deal with.
Just your spot.
Okay. We had our tourism board meeting last week. I'll represent our Kill Devil Hills on the board. And just couple of things I want to point out about the numbers. We have 600,000 email subscribers. We have 717,000 Facebook friends, and we have 33,800 on Instagram. But the interesting thing is that's more recent than Facebook. Even that 34,000 is 166% over last year. And as of for the fiscal year through December, that's 6 months, we've sent out 102,000 visitors guides. There's been 1,281,000 video views online on YouTube. We have 1,082,000 website visits. And I just want to pass that along to you because I was pretty impressed by it. I mean, we get these every month, you know, and they're always looking really good. I mean, we haven't had that I know of. It just keeps going back, getting better, and they do a great job over there. I wanted to pass that along. Figure I should maybe. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was in Raleigh the end of last week for work, and when I was in the hotel at night, the commercial that's showing right now about the Outer Banks that's put on by the tourism board, and it's a very sharp commercial. I mean, if I didn't live here, I'd be like, gosh, I want to go there. But anyway, I think it was nice to see it in the Raleigh market. I mean, that's really one of the areas they're advertising. But well done piece. Really promotes our area well. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Mayor's agenda. Just one item to update you on this evening and see if there's still consensus to continue moving forward. You may recall almost a little more than a year ago, I shared that I had been approached by a couple of people that were interested in working with the town to see if we can establish a fully accessible beach access where folks that are wheelchair bound could not only, I mean, we have accesses now where they could go up the ramp and stay at the top of the platform and see the ocean and the beach, but the vision here is actually to be able to go onto the sand potentially even down to the water and get in the water. And so I brought that to the board. Like I said, it's been probably more than a year ago. The board provided consensus at that time to continue looking into that. It seemed pretty open to that. Well, quite a bit of time had gone by and I had not heard from the folks that we had met with, but back before the holidays, she reached out to see if there was still interest. I said I'd love to meet with her. So yesterday, Dave Elder and I met with her again. He met with us the first time too, to continue that conversation. And some research had been done in between that span of time with the different types of products and what could be done, as well as looking at potential beach accesses that might be very suitable to this. And so through the discussion yesterday, the Hayman access was identified because there's not already a structure there. So it would be working on this special, it's, for lack of a better term, matting that's linked together. Probably the most similar thing that you may have seen would be down at Jeanette's Pier, the blue matting. So something similar to that, but not that exact product. But something like that could be put in place. I say semi-permanent. It can be certainly picked up. But something similar to that would be able to go over whatever dune structure is there or necessary, the path, whatnot. And so through the course of yesterday afternoon's discussion, it would be you would have something semi-permanent that would be there, that someone in their wheelchair could use, get up, and then if it was a suitable day, suitable meaning there would even be the opportunity to get in the water. There's certain days that you wouldn't even attempt this, that then there could be extra segments that could be linked to it and rolled out to actually provide access all the way down to the water. And that would be where one person, either a trained volunteer or someone affiliated with Ocean Rescue, certainly not the guard in the stand, that would be able to facilitate that. So it's kind of exciting that, it also doesn't seem like it's that large of a cost to the project. And when I say that, I'm guessing we're gonna get figures, but maybe somewhere in the between the matting and the wheelchairs, because we would want to have some additional beach access chairs that can go in the water, maybe $50,000. I'm not coming to ask for any money. Really, I think that there may be stakeholders out there that would be interested in funding this, and we've spoken with a couple already, that this aligns with their mission of providing access to folks who currently may not have that now. It was interesting to me, I was not aware, and Dave shared that currently during the summer, Ocean Rescue assists an average of 2.5 assist with mobility a day, helping folks get into wheelchairs. And we currently have a couple in getting to the beach, not in the water, but to the beach. And they have done programs where they've helped folks that do want to get in the water with that as well. But anyway, I think it's something that is doable. I was also contacted by North Banks Rotary, they're interested in supporting an initiative in this, maybe that initiative, kind of twofold. One of their interests too, we have, one of their interests is recognizing Bill Pitt and doing some type of memorial for Bill. He was very involved in North Banks Rotary. They reached out to me because they recognized his, gifts to the town of Kittle Hills and thought that might be an opportunity of a partnership, and they would look to provide some funding for that. And so it may be that this initiative could be combined together. We had spoken once at a meeting that once our beach nourishment was in place, that we maybe want to do something to recognize Bill and all of his efforts with bringing beach nourishment together. If Hayman Access did work out to do this accessibility project, that also is an access that's going to receive beach nourishment, so maybe it's a way to combine some of these awesome things together. So really it was just wanting tonight to brief you on that meeting and also make sure that there's still consensus to move forward with this type of initiative. If we can put a plan together, then to bring that concrete plan back together and then start identifying the funding sources.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yes.
Yeah.
We receive probably minimum 2 calls a year, maybe up to 6 or even 10 depending on the year for people asking about wheelchairs and wheelchair accessibility and how they can get on the beach. A lot of times they're asking about, where can they get the wheelchairs and do we have them? And I've sent them to Ocean Rescue, of course, but I think it's an awesome idea because that population, we do have the population, and that's what, when they're down here, that's what they wanna do. They wanna go to the beach, so. I
Well,
think
it's all ages.
it is absolutely, it's all ages. It's not just seniors, but when they get here, they think their best chance of being able to find a wheelchair is to call.
No, I understand, but I mean,
Yes.
we get the calls as well. And
Absolutely.
it's all ages, just people that need that at that
Yes.
time.
Well, the volunteer contact, her name's Rebecca Wilson, that's really advocating and wanting to support this and then also provide volunteers and maybe help grow this. She is affiliated with Disabled Veterans Group and volunteers for them. And, she was sharing that the group that she works with and volunteers with, and these are folks that on the right day, if they had access to the water, once they are out of their chair and into the water, they're gonna be able to swim around or get on board and paddle around, and what an amazing opportunity that is for them, that right now, they don't have that, and they want to be self-sufficient. If the path is there, they want to be able to take themselves down there, get out of their chair and take themselves into the water, so. Okay, well, we'll continue these meetings and hopefully, in the near future, bring back some type of plan. Good. Great. Okay, that's the only thing I have this evening, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. And there's the minutes.
Yes, ma'am, the minutes.
So that's the only thing on the consent agenda, the minutes from our January 9th meeting. Motion to approve?
So moved. I'll second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are now to the budget guidance work session. We're turning that over to Beverly.
We are.
Okay, welcome Beverly.
These are some, this budget guidance session are some items that have come up previously. They're, we can, I gotta get this, I haven't done this in so long.
While she's getting that, during the year, there was some things that came up in discussion that we would talk about at budget guidance. One in particular was recycling. There's some big ticket items like the bike path, or not bike path, but the path over on Bay Drive, and just some other issues. And then if, as you recall from the last meeting, you got just a very cursory review with the audit. And Beverly's gonna give you a little bit more of those numbers and speak a little bit more about that. And as you recall, you also directed us to incorporate in this upcoming budget year merits. Renew the merits. She's gonna touch on that and how we're looking at that. And we're gonna show you the things that we recall from your guidance during the year that we're gonna incorporate in the budget. And we want you then to tell us anything that we have not included that you'd like to see. That doesn't mean that when we present the budget to you in May that can't change, but we would appreciate any additional guidance that you could give us this evening. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna start out letting you know, what our valuation is, and this is from a year ago. Don't have the figures yet, because everyone's turning in their listing forms, and we won't have that information for about a month or so. But I don't foresee it being significantly different. So 1 cent at the town of Kelvin Hills generates $202,280. And we have a municipal service district, which generates 1 cent, and that district generates $14,017. So you can kind of see where where our tax levy is going.
And just to add to that, what that means is for every penny on the tax rate, that's what you see.
What you generate, every penny generates the 202.
Right.
Okay, and then this slide just basically shows you what our actual revenues were for June 30th, 2016, the year that we just finished with the audit. The largest portion of our revenue does come from ad valorem tax, which is 48%, and then the other, which is a very significant source, which is 29%, is that red piece of the pie, and that's our shared revenues that we share with the county and the other municipalities. And that represents about 29%, and that's for the actual revenues that were collected past fiscal year. Okay, now our adopted budget that we are in now, same thing pretty much applies. It's the ad valorem tax is at least 1/2. The shared revenues are 32% of that total budget that we're in now. Which is, to maintain our revenue sharing formula, it's maintains that red piece of the pie. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. We have been, this is the last 4 years of Kill Devil Hills percentages of those shared revenues. And as you see, when we taxed the beach nourishment, it jumped up a little bit.
Maybe just explain a little bit that that's based on the levy.
It's based on the levy. That's exactly right. It's based on our levy in relation to the other municipalities for occupancy tax, and it's based on our levy compared to other municipalities and their county for sales tax. And for example, in June of 2006, the last fiscal year, the total occupancy tax increased in total 4%. But because our levy share increased to Kill Devil Hills, our share was 9.3, not 9.3 of the, well, as you know, occupancy tax, they take a cut for beach nourishment, a cut for the tourism board, but the balance that was left to the towns, our occupancy tax grew 9.3% over the prior year. And also sales tax as well. The total back to Dare County was 5.25%. But for Kill Devil Hills, our sales tax revenue grew 14%. So it's a significant source of revenue for us. Okay, so what I want to show you here is for the budget we're in now, our total budget is $17,315,815. At June 30th, the undesignated fund balance was $9.1 million. That means that we had a 52.52% fund balance percentage, and that's our rainy day fund. That's our unassigned, means it's available for appropriation. So when we look at two different levels of fund balance percentage, the 45%, because you all have targeted or given us direction in the past for 35%. So when we look at 35% versus 45%, there is some additional monies to be appropriated from our savings in our rainy day fund. This appropriation at 45%, which is 1.3 million, or taking the fund balance all the way down to 35% would be approximately 3 million. And this source of funds would be good to do maybe a one-time project, capital reserve funding. It possibly, probably not to operate on, but to further our reserve funds. And stop me if anyone has any questions.
Well, I'm going to stop you because in a conversation that Beverly and I had, just to give you an example of a one-time expenditure, we've done it years and years ago with streets, where we appropriated a large amount of money in a particular fiscal year for streets. Something that we had talked about today that we would want to consider with this would be to finish the public works area as opposed to borrowing that money. As we all know, the rate that we have on the current loan that we have on the public works area is very good. Interest rates are going up. So to finish that area back there without borrowing money might be something we would want to consider. It's a one-time expenditure. It's not gonna be there. It's not something that you want to think about as a renewable, but it's just something to consider. And we'll work with that within our budget as we present to you, but it's just kind of one of those things that you might wanna think about. This isn't something that you would use for anything with the water fund. This is your general fund. A lot of times you'll see that we bring you things from the water fund that we do not finance. It's because of the difference in the two funds. So just an idea to float out to you.
Okay, so I'll move on to, some of the other guidance that we were looking towards, which was, consumer price index. We look at that as a measure of the cost of living increases for personnel. The most recent that I have received was the December, 12 months of December, and that's 2.1%. And if you equate that out for the general fund, that's the equivalent of $157,000, and that includes, the FICA and, the fringe stuff. And it's 2.1 for the water fund, would be 17,000. Now also, with the pay study and the personnel study, there was a merit and plan that we would look into. And so what we have done in the past is use that 0.875%. It's just a number that we looked at with an 8.75% merit pay increase. The general fund, it would cost the general fund $66,200, and the same with the bonus. So the merit is an increase to the salary level, but the bonus is a one-time payment. So that with the water fund, the same, it's be $7,350. So I guess we were just really looking at that merit bonus level and the cost of living, which are two separate things.
And these are numbers that will be in the budget that's presented to you for your guidance.
And these numbers are only on those particular pieces. Okay, the only other, looking at the budget from previous budget that we are currently operating in, I'm sure there are other things, but notably, we are proposing to lease purchase some equipment, so that would add the lease payments to the budget. So the net existing leases, which are things that were falling off and new things adding on, is $11,000 for the existing, and then for the new vehicle purchases and the equipment purchases, the first year it's $106,000. So that would be a budget impact. Any questions so far?
And that number is within what we're projecting within the tax rate.
Oh yeah, all of this is,
All of this is
I'm
within,
just pointing out what these differences may be.
no reason to pick up your stress.
Okay, and then this one was a little trickier for us to figure this out. We did get some help from NACSED on the recycling, that when they, their mandatory recycling program. I was able to get their tonnage data. And I also, and so since they haven't completed I don't have a full 12 months yet. We had to estimate some, but I think that we estimated in a good ballpark. So this mandatory versus the voluntary tipping fee savings were calculated by us. The outsourced service from May through September in Nags Head cost them $86,600. That was from, is it Bay Disposal? Bay Disposal?
Yeah.
And then they purchased their carts and they financed them for 3 years, and so that's gonna budget impact at $65,000. So again, I calculated the mandatory versus voluntary tipping fees based on their savings and what it was at the time it was voluntary versus where it is now that it's mandatory. And so we calculated a direct budget impact for the first 3 years of $140,000. And then, so the tax rate equivalent for that first 3 years for Kildable, if I applied that to Kildable Hills, it would be equivalent to 7/10 of a cent, or 7 cents of a cent, which, or plus up to at least 1 cent. So there are other costs that weren't calculated in this scenario, being the equipment, and the personnel that is doing recycling the other 7 months.
Right, when this was brought to the staff to ask us to look into, we had asked for permission from the board to give us a little more time and to bring this back at budget. And, we were hoping for a little bit more firm numbers, but, you know, understanding how that works, this was really the best numbers we could get from Nags Head. And honestly, our concern at this point is that there would be a financial burden to the town. And we feel that at this point, our optional recycling is going very well. Unless the guidance from the board is any different, we would like, at least for this next budget cycle, to continue that. Maybe at this point next year, we'd have a full year with Nags Head and maybe could get some of those other costs. One of our very big concerns, and Steve Albright, our Public Services Director, has mentioned it on several occasions, is, you know, we do have an area that we have a lot of homes that are vacant for a long time in the year. We would be paying, even though it would be a much less fee per month, we would be paying for those homes to be picked up when there's no usage. And that, obviously, that's how they're able to offer a better rate. We all understand that, you know, but it's just not something that we feel that we're at a point that we would recommend that the board would go in that direction. We also have a recycling center down at our public works site that the town has made huge improvements to, and we have a group of our citizens that truly prefer to take their recycling to the center, and that's what they would prefer to use. So I think until things change for us a little bit, that we're going in the right direction, at least for our town. But I certainly would defer to the board on any recommendations that he would have for us.
I'm in agreement with what Debbie shared.
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate you pulling the information together, because that's what we needed in order to make a decision on it, but I would say continue with where we're at.
One of the things I'll share with you, that when we first started looking at this a number of years ago, and my years have gotten so large, I forget how many, but was that perhaps what we would like to bring back to you with your consensus next year is maybe a plan where we could help. Now that the words just gone right out of my head, where you share the cost.
Mutual agreement?
Subsidize.
Subsidized.
That's a key.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Like, you know, and what I had proposed a number of years ago was and I just threw this number out because it's easy. Let's say it costs $10 a month, which we know it doesn't, it's not that much, but let's just say it did, and the town picked up 5 of it.
If that would incentivize more people.
If that would
to participate.
incentivize more people, as opposed to making it mandatory, and we pay for places that aren't using it, we help the people that would like to do it, that could just use that extra $5 a month to incentivize them to do it. And if that's something that you're interested in, we would certainly love to look into that and bring that back to you.
Yeah,
Let's not
that
forget
sounds good too.
Oh, I won't ever forget it. Got an
Yeah,
elephant
I'm
number.
okay with letting go for now. We'll wait to get some much better figures. And, I think we should still pursue it at some point.
We are still pursuing it, and honestly, you know, I'm really happy at how the numbers have grown for the people that are doing it. When you see the the ones that have opted out or that, are no longer doing it, I think what you're gonna see for a lot of those are simply the cottages that aren't open in the winter, and that's one of the great things about this company is they allow them to do that now. But that's not an option if it's mandatory.
Yeah, and again, I like the fact that we're looking at it, and I think it probably is best to wait until we have some firmer numbers, and I think that, I'm really shocked that those numbers aren't more, I guess that they're not larger, that the tipping fees that they're, it's not more.
Well, you can make it mandatory as far as having the carts, but you
Well,
can't make it mandatory as far as
you can bring
goes
the horse
into
to
what
water, but
cart.
you can't make him
But
drink,
you
so,
said-
and I think the incentivizing people is probably a much smarter way to go, because if
people that want
somebody
to do
wants
it.
to do it, they're
Right.
gonna do it right, but if
Right.
they don't wanna do it, they're gonna be throwing anything in there, and then we're gonna end up with just,
Or
with
not
all kinds of
necessarily
penalties for
throwing
stuff that
anything
we
in
don't.
there. They're
Yeah.
just gonna throw it in the other container and you're paying for the other container that's not gonna be used.
Or they're throwing non-recyclables in
And
the
most
recyclable
most
container, which is
recently,
even worse.
we received a, letter from Day was, I think they charge a tipping fee as well, so I had to offset that, a small one, of course, it's not as big. And it's like $10 if there's no glass, and there's $15 if there's glass in the container.
Right.
So, I mean, there is a cost there as well, but this, that figure is it's the difference in what it was at the mandatory level, at the voluntary level versus the mandatory level.
Well, and I
And
think
it grows in the summer, but then it cuts back
But-
off in the winter.
there is, we do recognize the savings in our tipping fees. But there's a cost for recycling.
And I think it'll be better if we have people who just want to do it versus making everybody do it.
Well, you're not gonna make them do it.
Or trying to, let me rephrase that, trying.
Thank you. We'll proceed with looking into maybe something that we can do to help, those that would like to do it, make it a little easier on their budgets.
Move on to now. And here are some, reserve fund balances that are available, at this point in time. And this is streets and stormwater after our projects are done for this year. The sidewalk at this point in time, the shoreline access. So we have some, funds accumulating in our reserve fund balances.
And of course, the shoreline accesses, you're gonna see those numbers, that number go down because we are gonna be using a lot of those funds once the beach nourishment, and getting those, areas with our beaches grown, so we're gonna have to push those, accesses back out.
Yeah, now, the communications reserve fund balance, that is accumulating, revenue every month from the cell phone leases on the water tower. So, That might be something to consider, I guess, when we get ready to do the water tank. Or whenever. All right, now this is, this was the recommendation for the prior year budget as well. And this is what we're recommending at this point for this year, for the streets and stormwater. Last year it was 500, and we scaled back a little for the bonuses. So I'm putting it back at 500, and then the sidewalk at 100. And again, anything, monies can be appropriated in these funds, but that's what we're looking at right now.
If you'll, wait, okay. We haven't for a number of years been putting anything into the shoreline accesses or the recreation. And, that's something that I'd like for the board to discuss this evening, is to get back into, making some contribution to those reserve funds. For a number of years, we did 25,000, and I think it was some years it got
15,
bumped up
30.
to 15. But with your permission, would like to look at starting, growing those funds again. And we'll, I don't wanna throw a number out at you right now, but we would like to work on that with the budget that we present you in May.
And just for clarification, what type of projects would be funded from like the shoreline access?
That is something that we also want to work on, that, budget, ordinance itself,
The
the
language,
reserve,
yeah.
the language in it. Because with beach nourishment, some of the improvements that are gonna be made are beyond what you would just think of as normal maintenance. Typically, the shoreline access is for building major improvements, and we wanna kind of tweak that language so that some of these, accesses that are gonna need major improvements because of beach nourishment, we can use that. So that's what that's for. The recreation is, again, these aren't maintenance, repair, these are more, new facilities, new improvements, major improvements. I know we got some real issues over here with the, area, the gate things, we're still dealing with FEMA and insurance on. But, more of your larger capital projects. And all of those would come to the board for your blessings. Those are not things that we can spend the funds from without your approval.
Those ordinances are in your budget for the different capital reserve funds, and like she said, they can only be spent by your approval. So they're all restricted, they're not part of the rainy day fund.
Right.
Those are
Restricted.
for specific use. For example, it just says for the purpose of the construction improvements, shoreline accesses.
But we're gonna work on tweaking that language when it comes back to you, in May. Beach nourishment, I wouldn't suggest at this point that we put anything in there. We'll get the project done, and then we'll start looking at how we, there's a whole separate reserve fund that we have there with the MSD and the whole thing, so we'll work on that some more before making any recommendations.
Yeah,
to
we
you.
will be constructing the beach under the
Right.
capital project fund, so we've got the money set aside for that from the financing and from their county share. But the general fund operating budget will be repaying the debt.
And then we'll start looking at the renourishment after the nourishment. We wanna be prepared.
Okay, so here we see we got the 600,000 kind of earmarked from the general fund going to the capital reserve fund.
And this, that particularly is the, Bay Drive.
Yeah, yep, that's coming
Here
up.
we come, here we are,
That's
okay.
coming up. So we have a phase 3 and 4 of the KDH multi-use path, and I guess that completes the path.
Yes.
Yes. And the estimated cost is $1.6 million. We have grant funding in place. We have Powell bill funds. With the sidewalk capital reserve fund, if we include that 100,000 that we just discussed last slide, we would have 246,000 in that fund, and then the streets, if we include 500,000, we would have sufficient funds there to complete that project.
And we felt that this was, an item that the board strongly wants to see completed. And we do have the funds, as Beverly has outlined, to do that.
And it's within our means right now.
Yes.
So it's within the existing tax rate.
And thank you very much to the planning department for their hard work with the grants. Yes.
If we did that though, based on our current fund balances in these reserve accounts, and then allocated for 17-18, would we then be depleting completely streets and stormwater and not eligible to do anything for streets and stormwater for the next year or two?
We would keep building it. We would just start
But we-
back building it again, and we're appropriating. We typically do, maybe not down to the penny, but we typically do pretty much exhaust it
Right.
from year to year.
So we almost though, unless we did something from, say, our general fund balance, we may have to forego a street project for a year?
This is our
This is
project,
the project for next year.
but this is a large project,
Right.
and
And I guess there would be stormwater
yes,
associated with that.
Yes,
that
ma'am.
would be, okay.
this is a lot of work for, water, streets, I mean,
It's all combined.
It's all
into-
combined.
Okay.
So this is the big project for next year.
And this would be our sidewalk project.
Yes. Obviously not aside, but yes, yes. It just made sense to do it 3 and 4 together. And, with the grant funding that, we were able to receive, and then we come back the next year and start looking at other areas that need street improvements, other things we want to look at for sidewalks. And there again, that's another item that the board could consider if you wanted to do with that, money that we talked about in the fund balance, if you wanna do a large sidewalk project. We're just thinking that particular money, you may want to use it for something that you would typically borrow money for that we don't need to. We don't borrow money for streets and sidewalks. Those are pay as you go. So yes, this is our recommendation, is to finish the multi-use path using these, grant funds that we've been able to receive, and then using, those other reserves and monies that we have, without depleting anything outside of what these monies were meant to be used for.
Yeah, we just had our streets and special projects committee meeting right before this one started at 4:30. And we went all through this, and that board forwarded a recommendation to our board. We'll be seeing it at a future date. They recommended that we do the multi-use path for 17-18. And then the following year, we'll have a modest budget for streets. One of the things that's important, I think, is that if we don't do this within a certain time frame or commit to it, we stand the chance of losing the grant money. If we don't do the project, we don't get the grant money, so that's almost $600,000 that we'd be squandering. It's a great opportunity, I think, for us to do it. Now, it is expensive. It'll be done. And it'll take about 7 to 8 months once it starts.
And that's something that's asked about a lot. I mean, I know I don't get asked about a lot of things, but that's something that is truly asked about frequently. And not only that grant funding is very competitive, so it it's not something we wanna risk losing. And I like the fact to go ahead and do 3 and 4 and then be done with it. I mean, it is nice to see something. I know all of you sitting in the, out there like to see something come done. We've started it, we've worked on it, we did not do all these things in exact order, but it is nice to finally see something completed, check. So, you know, I mean, it's not often you can say, yes, we've got the means to do this, let's do it.
One day, I'm on the grants committee with the tourism board, and this request came before us, I can't remember what month it was. Anyway, I will say that amount at $340,000 is a lot of money compared to what they usually give out. You know, they don't give out, you know, that kind of money all the time, so. There again, I think it's something we should take.
Yes.
Oh, you'll see that in May in your budget.
So this is a go, huh?
This is a good.
Okay. Good deal. All right, and again, I'm gonna move on to the last slide, kind of sum it all up, and again, I've mostly focused on the general fund, 'cause that's the largest fund. Our water rates normally take care of all of our water the water charges take care of our operations there.
And would you saying that, just to interrupt you for a minute, and we continue to follow the master plan recommendations.
And there are some couple of large, ticket items coming up in that master plan, like water tower painting and
Yep.
replacement and water lines, some big items are coming up in the budget year and the plan year, so.
That's why.
So
we have public
that needs a
bodies.
little more work.
Steve, I think you said something about it the other day, what's the timeline for replacing that tower? Is it 1920?
This budget, we're doing the phase 1, the site plan, we gotta locate it on that site, all the preliminary study, we've gotta get it sized accurately, they've gotta model our system and model the water we get from the county. We had a good meeting with, Pete's bringing on an additional consultant from Dewberry, which is probably a worldwide engineering company. So that'll all be done in this budget, there's money in this budget for that phase 1. And then next budget will be the actual structural engineering and the construction documents. And then it's about 400 days from when you say go with a contractor for completion.
It's almost as long as a fire truck.
What's the total cost on it, do you know, roughly?
The tank itself is about 1.7 million.
I think I got that here somewhere.
Total costs were budgeted, yes, you've
I got
got
it somewhere, I think.
closer to 3 million, because you've got
Yeah, the
all
tax
the
would be pretty
pipe
high.
work and site
Demolition.
work, and there's maybe some modifications to the pump station.
Yeah, and I don't know how closely, how we're gonna do this. I know in the budget year, we're looking at the paint and repair of the 8th Street elevated storage tank. Are you still gonna project that?
Yeah, that painting would be done next year.
In the 17-18, yes, in this upcoming budget. And then the tank, which is $3 million, I call it Old Town Hall elevated tank is $3 million. But also in that plan year, and I don't know if you wanna take a look at that again, but 1.6 million in pipe replacement. So that's gonna require a little work.
So we follow that plan,
Require a
very
little
well.
work. I mean, there's a few other minor things in there, but studies and this and that. But
And one other thing regarding the tank replacement at the fire station, I've been working with Sean Murphy and Dominic from VCOM, is the telecommunications equipment that's on there. We're looking at relocating that to a monopole, standalone, because our experience has been the technology changes so rapidly that every 3 months they're up changing antennas, changing out radio heads, and all that traffic up and down the tank with the ropes and the equipment really deteriorates the coatings, the paint on that tank. And so when you look at that tank that was painted the same time as 8th Street, it's just not done well. So there's enough money in that telecommunications. We're looking at getting them on a standalone so they can have access, and we don't have any of those issues.
You got that reserve,
There's been,
well,
it's
that's
like you've
reserve
got the
funds.
advantage, we've all recognized the advantage of having those antennas on that tank as far as our cell service, but we've also recognized that it has cost, the longevity of the tank.
Would that standalone be permanent?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at, an area close to their existing facilities so that they can come off of the tank, and it's kind of the area where, if you know where the wildlife boats, if you've been up there to the ATM, there's some boats parked there. Right in there is what they're preliminary looking at for the monopole, and then hopefully the new tank will go just behind, on the ball field side of where the existing tank is. But that's in this first study, they've got to confirm that all that can fit. But the monopole, the numbers I'm hearing for that is I think around 200,000. So there's,
Chunk change.
yeah, plenty of money in that account to,
Well, and when you, like you say, when you factor in what it's done to the longevity of the tank.
and Dominic's also hopeful that new tower will have more space and he can attract,
More
additional
users.
providers. Cause right now we're maxed out with the two carriers.
Thank you, Steve.
So anyway, this is kind of accumulating what we've been through already, and, again, things can change. We don't have all our operating budget requests. We don't have, we've had an opportunity to turn in some capital things, but things come up in the course of doing the budget. But with the, what we have on deck right now at the 469, I feel like with the growth in revenues, and what we've seen in the past, what we've collected in the past, and that, assuming the economy is gonna continue to grow, we should be able to accomplish these things with the existing tax rate.
That is our goal.
That is the goal.
How does keeping the tax rate flat affect us per share revenue though?
We're okay, because as Beverly pointed out, when you did the, beach nourishment,
That carries us.
that's gonna carry us.
Now, if Nax Head raises their levy to do theirs, it will shift ours. It will affect us, and it did when they first.
Right,
But
we took a hit.
It's usually like kind of like at the end where we're all getting ready to adopt our budgets, we're all looking, are you raising your tax rate, are you raising, so we're all trying to stay in the game.
But we'll, obviously that's something we'll keep an eye on and keep you informed. But our goal is to present you a budget in May that reflects the current tax rate and provides the items that you've asked us to bring to you.
And I presented that shared revenue just to let you know how much that is a part of our budget. Not that we won't receive any, we just don't won't receive as much, it fluctuates. So that's pretty much all I have for this evening.
And there are, with that being said, there are a lot of other things up in the air, as you know. Southern Shores is looking at beach nourishment. And, I think that may involve a tax increase for them. So I mean, there's a lot of things, that are unknown for all of us right now. But at this point, we feel comfortable in that unless there's some other guidance you want to give us, that the budget we'll present to you in May will be at the current tax rate and will reflect the items that you've asked us to put in it.
I went to the meeting up at the Hilton last week about the public hearing about the beach nourishment in Southern Shore. One room they had set up was, they set up 148 seats. And when I got there, we were standing. Bill and I were there together. Sorry about that. So they opened up the partition, and then we were able to sit in the other one. And so there's probably over 200,000 people. We're talking like big numbers,
Southern Shores has grown quite a bit.
Yeah, 200 people, and they were probably about 60-40 in favor, would you say, or 70-30 or something like that, the speakers. And then the next morning, Southern Shores had their commissioners meeting, they voted unanimously, right? Or no, one dissent.
Yeah, 1 dissent.
Yeah, one dissent, but they voted to move forward. That doesn't mean they're gonna do it, they have a lot of hoops to jump through.
They voted on the study,
On what?
to do the study,
Yeah,
to
right,
study the
study.
beach.
But they got a lot of hoops to jump through before, if they wanna get on this page, right?
Is there even a way they can get on?
They had it, yes.
Let's say, that's, isn't it? I mean,
There are opportunities for cost saving.
So,
So, Debbie,
Any questions?
back to budget. Question, when we had the salary study that was shared year before last, and we implemented a few measures, and that's when I think we provided the guidance that this year we wanted to reestablish the merit. Were there other items in there that still need to be, do we need to revisit and look at any of that,
I
or
will
does this,
revisit that, but
Okay.
I do think that this was the last part of
this
this.
gets us on track with
Yes,
the
ma'am.
recommendations?
But I'll be happy
Okay.
to revisit that, just to, make sure.
Okay. And then another note that I had just made, so I know we've discussed needing to, with the beach nourishment project through the summer and into the fall, really do a lot of communication with the public for how things are going, how it's flowing. Do we think we can utilize existing resources with staff and the county and sharing, or is that something we would need to consider, having any additional revenue to support anything?
We obviously are gonna spend more on advertising than we typically would. But Mary and, members of her team are working very hard on that. They're also working in conjunction with the other towns. There's gonna be some cost sharing on brochures and things that we can all utilize. The county's working with us, Doc, Kitty Hawk, and, is that it?
Yeah,
leave out
I guess
anybody?
in the county.
Dare County, Doc, Kitty Hawk, us?
Mhm.
And maybe Southern Shores, what do I know? But no, they've all been working on that for some time and, have put together a really good package. I think Benny's working with you, you're gonna be different. You're working with different sources on,
Yes,
yeah, and videos,
We've got it.
brochures.
we've got a variety of different ways that we're proposing to communicate with people.
Mary's been in touch with the Visitors Bureau on getting, working with them and helping get our, property management companies involved in helping us get the information to the rental companies, direct things to our homeowners on the ocean front through our, water billing. So, thank you for that. If it looks as though we need to come back to you, certainly we will, but I think that's something that within our operating budget we have prepared for.
Great.
We may need some of you to star in some videos for us.
We can do that as needed.
Okay.
Well, the notes that I brought are already covered in that. Anything else from anyone? Okay.
Thank
Well,
you very
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And you're thinking that
Staff.
it would be the first meeting in
It's the
May
first
that this is
meeting in May.
presented?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And we'll follow up on that, but possibly the first meeting in May presented, second meeting in May, your workshop, public hearing at the first meeting in June, and adopted at the second meeting in June.
Sounds like a plan.
Feel free to take your stress balls home with you.
Need it for the county budget.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great, Philip, would you like to comment? We're back to public comment.
I'll pass.
Okay, anyone else? Yeah. With that, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you, have a great evening.